Hello and welcome to the penultimate episode of Chuchu is a Ranker's Final Countdown, the show where I detail my personal favourite top 50 albums from least best to best. Now, quick note on the concept of subjectivity. This is not a list of the quote-end-quote top 50 best albums, it's a list of my top 50 favourite albums. As such, the entire list will likely be made up of weird records that nobody likes but me. But for better or for worse, these are the top 50 records that I just keep coming back to again and again come rain or shine, and I deeply love and highly recommend each and every one of them. So without further ado, let's be complete rankers and rank up a storm. These are albums number 10 to 6 of Chuchu is a Ranker's Final Countdown. Kicking off this episode at number 10, we have The Golden Mile by My Life Story from 1997, which was the Britpop also ran's second LP. And what is there to say about My Life Story, eh? They were a minuscule Britpop act fronted by the Cockney Flash boy Jake Shillingford. He actually got the band together by lurking down in the London Underground and accosting anyone carrying an instrument case. The upshot of this is that Jake ended up with a whole bunch of string and brass players backing up his melodic Britpop tunage. This makes the band come off as a kind of working class version of the Divine Comedy, full of pom-pom bombast and tangible Smithian overtones. The bigger scale sadly didn't result in bigger success, with the band's biggest hit Strumpet only making number 27 on the UK singles chart. They did have a small clutch of other top 40 hits though. Their eventual fate was to go down with the Britpop ship after a failed third album, although in the late 2010s the band did reactivate in a scaled down form. So again, not really much to yell about. My Life Story has a very small footprint upon the history of music. Except, this one particular album, The Golden Mile, is a masterpiece. It is a hidden gem of the very highest order. From the second it starts, it just smashes home run after home run, gifting you with some of the catchiest and most euphoric songs to come out of the Britpop era. Highlights on a flawless banger would include, you guessed it, everything. The single cuts are all incredible. Opener, 12 Reasons Why I Love Her, crashes out of the gates with a thumping pace and a sense of Baroque rock about it. The band's biggest hit, Strumpet, is a rampaging rocker, livened up no end by a blasting horn section and Jake's cougar-baiting lyrics as he croons, plunging neckline, doctor's design, goodbye to cellulite, hello to silicone. The King of Kissingdom is about as an effusive a Britpop tune as you could ever imagine, with its bouncing energy and insane catchiness. Speaking of insane catchiness, Sparkle is arguably the band's masterwork in that category, its sweeping grandiose bombast and driving bass line blasting off into the stratosphere, while the closing cover of Duchess by the Stranglers heads down the cheesy synthpop route and is a whole bunch of cheddary fun. But elsewhere the quality just doesn't dip, from the atmospheric melancholy of tracks like Claret and November 5th, to the distinctly Morrissey-esque April 1st, to the gorgeous piano balladry of Mr. Boyd, to the giant pop balladry of You Can't Uneat the Apple. It's just all really phenomenal stuff. So yeah, The Golden Mile is one of the most underrated and undersold records I can think of. It does have a small but ardent cult following, but it really should be way more well known than it is. I absolutely love this album and I can't recommend it enough. 5 stars. Next up we have The Inevitable End by Royksopp from 2014, which was the Norwegian electronica duo's 5th LP. And the title of the record is very apt, as the band meant it as their retirement album. They announced prior to the release of the record that, while they would continue to play live, The Inevitable End would be their last music release in the album format. That ultimately didn't hold, as the group would return with their Profound Mysteries trilogy in the 2020s, but at the time the intent for this to be Royksopp's swan song was definitely there. That feeling of finality is all over the record, threading through its every fibre. One of the members of the duo was obviously having a very tough time during the making of this album, as the lyrics mostly revolve around infidelity leading to a splintered relationship, maybe even divorce. It's pretty intense and emotionally raw stuff, with the songs diving into all the pain and regret that comes with that kind of subject. The album is right there musically too, offering up an always melancholy clutch of tunes that sink into seas of creaking synthwork and sad sounding melodies. A lot of effort was obviously put into giving the album a cohesive and atmospheric overall vibe, and it works like gangbusters, dragging you down into the depths of despair and inevitable catharsis over its girthy 1 hour and 23 minute runtime. And just like all the best really long albums, it's one that you just have to sit back and float through, absorbing all the details of the emotional journey it takes you on from start to finish. And of course enjoying a whole bunch of bangers along the way that temper their sadness with waves of extreme catchiness. The opening Skulls turns on the gothic atmosphere with its distorted vocal effects and sinister soundscapes. The following Monument changes tact, introducing regular vocal collaborator Robin for a club-tinged thumper that subverts his dance floor vibes with lyrics that are about death and leaving a suitable epitaph. Talking about Robin, the album's version of Do It Again is rad, building up from a rudimentary pop song into an epic atmospheric slice of awesomeness that feels like the stars wheeling overhead. Chef's kiss for that one, I absolutely love it. I Had This Thing definitely mixes this electropop with some devastating breakup lyrics. While the Susan Sunfer fronted Running to the Sea starts as a maudlin piano ballad but slowly picks up pace and energy until it's morphed into an emotional storm. Elsewhere you have some fantastic downbeat dirges in the form of Sordid Affair and You Know I Have to Go and I Had This Thing, some sweeping string action on Wrong and Oh No, and some cathartic instrumental interludes via Coup de Grace and Goodnight Mr. Sweetheart. So yeah, The Inevitable End by Royksopp is my all-time favourite electronica album. The deeply sad atmosphere the record whips up is one of the best I've ever heard. It just sucks you in like a melancholy black hole and then spits you back out purified and refreshed. 5 stars. Next up we have Coming Up by Suede from 1996, which was the Britpop legend's third LP. And this album came in the wake of guitarist Bernard Butler's departure from the band. He was replaced by a then 16-year-old Richard Oakes. I mean, wow, that's one hell of a gamble, replacing a beloved music press favourite with a goddamn school kid. Of course the critical knives came out and the press waited for Suede's implosion with feverish glee. Instead, they had to suck a big fat one as Suede came back bigger than ever, peddling a pitch-perfect album that spawned 5 top 10 singles in the UK. That hoard is doubly impressive when you realise that Coming Up only has 10 songs on it. I mean, half the bloody album is comprised of mega hits that were just everywhere in the late 90s. I mean, you couldn't go into a shopping centre without hearing either Trashed, Beautiful Ones or Saturday Night emanating from the speakers above the local Tandy. But that's the way Suede wanted it, as their attack plan for their comeback was to ditch the pretentious proggy artistry of their previous album Dogman Star and return with a record containing 10 straight up hits. And hell yeah did they deliver. But more than that, as Coming Up also has a super cohesive atmosphere. The record feels like a dank nighttime ride through the dodgier parts of London. It's urbane and sweaty and vice-ridden and really fucking good. Highlights on my favourite album to come from one of the Britpop Big Four includes, you guessed it, Nothing. The album's absolutely shit and I'm just yanking your chain for shits and gigs. Alright then everything, Jesus. Of course all the singles are phenomenal. Trash comes blasting out of the gates with a sense of anthemic gutter romance as Brett Anderson croons, "We're trash, you and me, with a litter on the breeze." The glammy stomp of film star is Britpop catchiness personified. Lazy cryptically talks of Uncle Ted's and their legendary vests helping out around the disabled over a distorted rocker. But, better Uncle Ted than Jimmy Savile, eh? Beautiful Ones instantly impresses with its Richard Oakes guitar riffage that aptly showed that he could equal Bernard Butler's excellence. While the closing, Saturday Night, is the greatest David Bowie ballad that never was. But away from the singles, things don't dip, not even once. From the thumping wiry buzz of She and Star Crazy, to the gorgeous maudlin piano balladry of By the Sea, to the jazzy rhythm guitar work on The Chemistry Between Us, to the wonderfully emotive acoustic subtlety of Picnic by the Motorway, which might actually be my favourite off the record, it's all exceptional stuff. So yeah, coming up is simply an essential Britpop release, and in my opinion one of the most consistently brilliant guitar pop records ever put to tape. 5 stars.
It's by the sea we'll bring. It's by the sea we'll bring. It's by the sea we'll bring. It's by the sea we'll bring.
Next up we have Vauxhall I by Morrissey from 1994, which was the band's 4th solo LP. And here, powered by some passings in his inner circle, Morrissey created the most resigned, reflective and melancholy release of his solo career. It's also his greatest achievement as a solo artist, at least in my opinion. Morrissey's always brilliant lyrics are lent a lot of power by the production on the record. The songs are coated by a shimmering distant lacquer that gives them a nice cathartic punch. It's a technique that stands in sharp contrast to the 2 albums that came either side of it, with 1992's Your Arsenal and 1995's Southpaw Grammar really going for a clatteringly raw rock energy. Here things are much more subtle, with Alan White's and Boz Bora's compositions often recalling the more jangly work of Johnny Marr. This is definitely the Morrissey solo record that sounds most like his former band The Smiths. And the greatest highlights on Vauxhall I easily stand toe to toe with the best tracks that Moz ever recorded with his former group. The opening ballad, Now My Heart Is Full, perfectly straddles the line between being epic and falling into resigned defeat, as Morrissey attempts to muse on the cathartic power of old British cinema and local working class life, eventually sighing, "I just can't explain, so I won't even try to." But somehow his resignation just adds exponentially to the catharsis of the piece. It's just so English. Spring Hill Jim heads into near gothic territory with his moody guitar wails, as Morrissey chides a careless playboy. Spring Hill Jim lives to love, now kissing with his mouth full, and his eyes on some other fool. So many women, his head should be spinning. Ah, but no. The bold guitar riff that powers the album's main single, The More You Ignore Me, The Closer I Get, sounds pretty iconic these days, as Moz suitably warns, "Beware, I bear more grudges than lonely high court judges." Alan White's gorgeous acoustic backing lends more power to Why Don't You Find Out For Yourself, which sees Morrissey deliver his finest sermon on what it is to be a pop star. While Closer Speedway is arguably my favourite ever Morrissey track, on which he defiantly spits venom at his detractors and fair weather friends, cryptically concluding, "I could have mentioned your name, I could have dragged you in. Guilt by implication, by association, I've always been true to you. In my own sick way, I've always stayed true to you." But yeah, everything hits its mark here, from the wah-wah smothered rock of Billy Budd, to the lightweight guitar pop of Hold On To Your Friends and I Am Hated For Loving, to the sanguine hilarity of the Lazy Sunbathers. Religions fall. Children shelled. Children shelled? That's all very well, but would you please keep the noise down low? To the whispered atmospherics of Lifeguard Sleeping, Girl Drowning, it's all top drawer classic Morrissey goodness. 5 stars.
You can't pay, take the easy way and give in. Yeah, and let me in. Oh, let me in. Oh, let me, let me in. It's war, it's war, it's war, it's war, it's war, 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 war.
Concluding this episode at number 6, we have Drawn to the Deep End by Gene from 1997, which was the Britpop Underdog's second LP. And although the ghost of the Smiths is always vaguely present around the band, here Gene move away from the Morrissey aping emulation of the debut album Olympian and into the realms of something more cinematic and significantly more ambitious. In fact, this album totally goes for broke. This is Gene's attempt to make an epic, to make the best guitar pop record of all time. In a lot of ways, it really reminds me of Suede's Dogman Star in its level of scope and raw undiluted ambition. However, it is definitely less pretentious than Suede's sophomore effort, which is also a masterpiece that was featured earlier on this final countdown, I should add. Here Gene infused their songs with prog rock overtones. There are several low-key atmospheric breaks, some twisting proggy structures, and even some repeated motifs to dig into, all of which help give the album its sense of depth and artistic fulfillment. Likewise, the amount of variety on offer here is startlingly impressive. You have prog, 1950s balladeering, folk, punk, 1970s style classic rock, New Orleans funeral marches, proto-rockabilly, and of course typical 90s Britpop, all vying to grab your attention and steal the show. But the fact is that everything steals the show. I mean, there is not a weak moment on the entire package. Cherry picks from my absolute favourite album while I was a teenager would include the obvious catchy bounce of Fighting Fit. It's as strident a Britpop tune as you could ever wish for, and should have made the UK top 10 rather than the top 30. Maga ballad Speak to Me Someone is velveteen and grandiose in all the right ways. It's 1950s reels feeling like sinking into an aged leather chair with a glass of fine whiskey. We Could Be Kings turns on the Elvis Presley vibes but subverts its rockabilly leanings with some gnarly distortion and a shifting proggy structure. Save Me I'm Yours meanwhile is all about its spacious atmosphere and gorgeous bluesy guitar work. Voice of the Father careens into revenge-laden punk as Martin Rossiter spits, I am bad dreams made real. I won't rest until time has swallowed you. While Sob Rosa is one of my favourite closers ever. Its build-up from a gently picked lullaby to full-on rockist explosion is just a thing of beauty. But yeah, I'm just scratching the surface there, from the straight-up prog of Opener, New Amusements, to the grandstanding anthemics of Where Are They Now, to the miserable Smithian folk of Long Sleeves for the Summer, to the unbridled romanticism of Why I Was Born, drawn to the deep end never fails to make your jaw hit the floor. In my opinion, this is probably the most underrated record I can think of. I mean, it should have been huge, but alas, the tide of fashion can be a cruel mistress. Still, for me, this was the very best record to come out of the Britpop movement. I mean, if you told my 18-year-old self that this wasn't number one on this list, he would have beaten your ass to death with his mother's dreaded punishment dildo. So yeah, this is a masterpiece. 5 stars.
I can't take it. It's too much time being wasted. So come and get my plate full. I am finally fit and able. No, I can't take it when this one twist hurts me. So just settle down and let me. Oh, I'm tasting life and I'm ready.
So, stop trying to fuck that hamster, you dirty bastard, and turn your attention to the Battle of the Decade style scoreboard, where we tabulate how many albums from each decade make up my top 50 favourite albums. The 1990s blast uncatchably far into the lead, now with 16 entries. The 1980s remain in second with 10 entries. The 1970s and 2000s remained in a locked heat for third, each with 6 entries. The 2010s are in fifth, now with 5 entries. And the 1960s may as well be breeding hamsters for perverts, as they're in last place with only 2 entries. And that's another episode of Chuchu as Aranka's final countdown in the bag. The top 5 and final episode of the series is fast approaching. It will also be my last episode as a regularly broadcasting YouTuber. Semi-retirement awaits the Chuchu with open arms and hopefully a bottle of nice old scotch. In the meantime, don't forget to like, share, subscribe and all that other kind of YouTube jazz. Make sure to take care of yourself, but most importantly, just keep on ranking.